All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Ask Coach Andrew. We have a fantastic email from another viewer today, and it's a little on the longer side, which is perfectly fine because I like getting lots of information. It allows me to give you a more detailed response as opposed to a more generic, overreaching kind of response. I can kind of hone in on some details here, and I'm just going to read this email to you, and then we're going to go through it line by line and kind of point out some of the lies that this person is telling themselves and try to help them craft a better story so that they can start improving their quality of life. So, here's the email. Dear Andrew, thank you so much for your response. I have always been a person with very low self-esteem, coming from my relationship with my parents and my brothers, I believe. At 31, it's getting worse because I realize how my life has passed me by. I've been in this cycle where my low self-esteem is leading to withdraw into myself a lot and to be unproductive, while I have lots of buried inspirations and potential. This behavior takes almost all the space in my life, and the total absence of productivity that follows is fueling my self-loathing. This is torturing my mental health so much that I have even been self-harming in the past to somehow make this buried potential and flame come out of me. I'm 31, and every day when I'm walking in the street or having breakfast, I keep thinking about how much I hate myself, and also that it shouldn't be an excuse, that I need to take action, otherwise I'm going to be living dead for the rest of my life. So my relationship. We have been together for more than a year. For about 9 months, I've been hiding all of this from my boyfriend, who is precious to me. I didn't want this really unhealthy part of me to ruin everything, but it became too heavy, and now I have started to slowly try to communicate these things to him. He didn't respond with the deep understanding that I would get from someone like you. He's not used to talking about these things. He's a scientist. He's very rational and practical. And while I'm lost in this emotional thought process that I hate, he's helping me think more rationally. So, in another way, it makes it hard for me to feel understood on an emotional level, even though he says he understands. He's talented with guitar and songwriting, but this goal is important and terrifying to him. I try to keep my goals simple. I just want to go back to university to learn psychology and write and illustrate children's books, but I'm still stuck somewhere towards the beginning of that. He goes to the lab every day, even on the weekend, and then when he comes home, he practices guitar. He's very tired and he feels like he's chasing after time, while I only work 3 days a week, and the rest of the time I struggle to do my daily yoga and struggle even more to do anything related to arts or university. Every night when he comes home, I feel very guilty, but he still lights up my life with his humor. So yes, I feel like he's way too good for me. I'm pretty sure he'll end up leaving me because I'm not self-disciplined and I'm not a doer like he is. We're in the lockdown together now, so he can see how I am even more closely. I feel ashamed, and I've been asking him if I disappoint him and if he still wants to be with me. He says he wants to stay with me. He just wants me to believe in myself and be happy about myself and fulfill my own goals in life, whatever they are. He can see how I talk down about myself, and I'm afraid that this is going to tire him. I keep feeling unloved because of my own lack of self-love, and also he's very busy and stressed with work, and he has no libido anymore, which doesn't help me feel loved. The fact is, I want to change, because otherwise I'm really not living. I don't fully understand where this behavior is coming from, and I also want to show him that I can better myself, because this relationship is very important to me. I think I need help to see if there's any hope for us, but mainly to change my behavior. Thank you for listening. So, first things first, this is super important. You mentioned that in the past you've been self-harming. If you are self-harming or thinking about self-harming, any of you watching this or the woman who wrote this, please, the first thing you need to do is see a doctor, see a psychiatrist. Now, I do not think that psychiatry or medications are the answer for most people. In fact, I think 90% of people can solve most of the problems in their life without psychiatry, without medications. The one exception that is super, super important, and it's also the reason why we need psychiatrists, it's why we need medications, is situations where people are hurting themselves, or really, really desperate situations where someone's about to lose their job, they're about to lose their house, they're about to lose their family or their marriage or their kids. If you are in a desperate situation, self-development is probably not going to help you. Mindset is probably not going to help you in that moment. Sometimes you need a medication to help balance the chemistry in your brain. And if that's the situation you're in, go see a doctor, get some medication, get a little bit of equilibrium in your life. Stabilize things so that you stop hurting yourself, so that you can function at work, so that you can be a parent, right? Those things are more important than your pride or your ego or your self-development, okay? Just do what you need to do. You can always come back to me, come back to YouTube, come back to self-development at a later time and work on getting off the medication and doing things naturally. That's perfectly fine. But if you're in a situation where you're going to hurt yourself, please go take care of that first. Now, let's dive into this email. So, I've always been a person with low self-esteem coming from my relationship with parents and brothers. That's important. I'm glad you can identify that. A really, really powerful way to dig into your past and start figuring out where some of your trauma is coming from. And if you read the works of Freud, Gabor Mate, even like Carl Jung, a lot of these people, basically anyone in the field is going to tell you that childhood trauma, things that happen when you're young, are important, right? It's the whole nature versus nurture argument. It is important. Your childhood shapes a lot of who you are. Just how much? We don't really know for sure. But it is important to go into your past. A lot of people who ignore and suppress what happened to them as children really are never able to go anywhere with self-development. They're never able to work on their mindset because they're not addressing the root. Big swaths of your brain, big swaths of your neurons in your brain have already been hardwired. They've already been formed. They're already shaped and constructed and built a certain way because of your childhood. And unless you accept that and start digging into the roots, it's like an excavation, an archaeological dig, if you will. You got to dig in there. You got to find the artifacts. You've got to get the stones with the inscriptions and figure out what happened to you, because those roots are something that you need to make peace with. You need to identify them and find ways to let them go. Sometimes you have to have hard conversations with people. Sometimes you just need to write about it. Sometimes you just need to talk about it. Whatever it is, you'll figure it out. But the fact that you're somewhat aware of things in your past that may have negatively affected you, that's good. That's great progress. I want you to further elaborate on this. This is your first piece of homework. Go buy a very nice journal. Go to a store, a craft store or something like that, and get like a $16 or $25 journal, like maybe leather-bound, hardcover. Make it real nice. And every night I want you to sit down for 15 minutes, maybe more if you feel like it, and write an autobiography. Page 1 is the day you were born. You're not going to write anything because you don't remember anything. Page 2 can be your very first memory. Okay, so the earliest memory that you think you have, write about it. Try to describe what you remember seeing, what you remember feeling, who was there, and just work your way up through your life. Mention all the important things. And anytime something painful or uncomfortable or traumatic comes up, write about it in detail. Once you start going and your hand is working away and you're just writing and you're not really thinking about it, you're going to tell yourself how you feel, right? Maybe you're sitting here thinking like, oh, I do remember when I had that fight with my dad when I was 11 years old and it wasn't that bad. But once you start writing about it, you're gonna realize how much you hated him in that moment, or how mean he was, or how cold and unloving he felt to you, how neglected you felt. All of these things will come out if you just let yourself write about it. So write yourself a little autobiography. Start trying to understand what your parents and your brothers did to you that messed you up. Because if you can identify that, you can start using that as an underlying sense of self, right? Important information that just kind of rests beneath your consciousness. And whenever you do something that's connected to that, you're going to be like, oh, I've actually been doing this my whole life, and it might be kind of rooted in what happened then. And all of this time I've been feeling this way or thinking this way because of that. And when I was in middle school, it was irrelevant because of X, Y, and Z. And then when I did that in high school, that made no sense because I was feeling this because of that. And now here I am, and I'm still doing this despite all of these things, and it's insane. And you might start realizing things like that. And that can be very, very powerful. That can be a serious shift in the way you look at yourself and the way you think about your life. So secondly, you say here, at 31 it's getting worse because I realize how my life has passed me by. All right, here's the first lie. Okay, here's the first lie that you told me in your email. Because you're 31. You're young. Your life has not passed you by at all. All right? You're approaching the middle of your prime, okay? Your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and if you play your cards right, your 50s are your prime, okay? We can talk about, your reproductive prime, okay? That's usually around like 26 or 27, I think. You've still got more than a decade left if you want to have a family. That's up to you. If you're talking about your professional prime or your academic prime, you literally have your whole life, okay? There are professors in their 80s, 90s sometimes. That's a lie. Look, here's the bottom line. If you play your cards right, if you can learn how to keep your stress levels low, that's probably the most important. You do that by sleeping, exercising, eating good food, and having a positive mindset and making progress towards your goals. If you can figure out how to do that, you've got decades of your prime left. And the truth is, a lot of people, they overestimate what they can do in a year, right? So like, take New Year's resolutions, for example. I usually don't get more than half of mine, which is totally normal because I overestimate what I can do in a year. But people really underestimate what they can do in 2 years or 3 years or 5 or 10. Everybody does this because our brains are not built to think that far out, right? Our brains, at its root, our brain is designed to think about tomorrow. It's designed to think about right now. It's designed to think about making babies, finding food tonight, staying warm tonight. Like that's the core of life, right? That's the reptile brain, if you will. We're not built to think about 10 years from now. So we're really bad at it. But the truth is people don't know what they're capable of in 5 years or 10 years. You could be a completely different person by the time you're 35 or 40. And when you're 40, you're still young. You can still go run marathons. You can still lift weights. You can do all kinds of... You can still have kids if you're careful, right? There's no reason to think that your life has passed you by. And that's just a fact, okay? I don't think I need to spend any more time on that, but that's the first lie you've told me, okay? So, you also wrote, I'm 31 and every day when I'm walking in the street or having breakfast, I keep thinking about how much I hate myself. And also that it shouldn't be an excuse, that I need to take action, otherwise I'm going to be living dead for the rest of my life. Real quickly, I want to mention that you're good at writing. I don't think English is your native language. I think you mentioned in one of your emails prior to this one, because we were corresponding for a while, I think you mentioned that you're from another country in Europe. So I don't think English is your first language, but you're good at writing. You have some beautiful language in here. So I just want to throw that at you because I honestly believe that. But here's the thing about that. You keep thinking about how much you hate yourself and also that it shouldn't be an excuse. That's another lie. That is an excuse. If you hate yourself, you're not going to have a good life. You shouldn't be sitting there trying to tell yourself that you can simultaneously hate yourself and have a good life. That's not how it works. So that's another false story that you're telling yourself. If you hate yourself, just admit it. Say, okay, I hate myself. Like right now, in this moment, I don't like myself very much. But if you're going to do that, at least give yourself the dignity of writing why. Write down all the reasons why you don't like yourself. This is important. Understand the things about your life that you're struggling with, the things about you that you just don't like. Because once you identify them, the same way when you journal about your past and your parents and your brothers, once you identify those reasons, you're going to start understanding all these negative thoughts you have. Because if you spend all day sitting around going, I'm lazy, I'm worthless, I can't do this, I'm unlovable, I'm never going to get back into university, I'll never finish this children's book, if you're going to bother doing that for an entire day, for an entire month, at least understand why you think that about yourself. Why can't you finish the kid's book? Why can't you get back into university? Why can't you clean the kitchen? Why can't you do those things? Well, it's because I'm lazy and I feel tired all the time and I know I don't exercise, so my energy levels are low and I sleep way too much and that makes me tired and in the past I did this and yesterday I did this and that's because I feel this way. Like write it down, be detailed, okay? If you're going to have a very strong opinion about yourself, such as I hate myself, make it a good opinion. Back it up with evidence, because that is going to give you clarity. And it all starts with clarity. You have to understand why you're feeling what you feel, if it's good or if it's bad. All right, so that's your second piece of homework. Write down why you don't like yourself. I think you already know, but write it down. So then you talk about your relationship. So you've been together for over a year. And for about 9 months, you've been hiding this from your boyfriend. You didn't want this to ruin everything, but you've started to communicate with him slowly, and you didn't really quite get the response that you wanted. So the first thing I'm going to bring up This is pretty generic advice, but it's really where you need to start. There's a fantastic book out there called The Love Languages. I'm gonna look it up so I can give you the author right now. The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. Okay? If you haven't heard about this book, if you've never read it, I recommend you go buy it right now. The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. This book basically points out the different ways that people feel loved, right? It's been a long time since I read it, but basically there's acts of service, which is where people do favors for you. This is my wife's love language. So if I clean the kitchen for her, if I do the dishes, that's an act of service, and it makes her feel loved. There's physical affection, right? So touch, being hugged, making love, kisses, things like that. That can make certain people feel very loved. Words of affection, right? This is mine. When people say nice things to me, that's how I feel most loved. There's basically 5 different love languages, and everyone has like a different score for each one. It sounds to me like the two of you probably have very different love languages, which is likely because you sound like you're very different people. He's very rational. He's a scientist. He sounds like he might even be a little bit of a workaholic. There's a chance, I'm not going to make this judgment because all I have to go off is your email, but it sounds like there's a chance he puts his work before you. Whereas you, it sounds like you want to put him before all of your stuff. You want to put him first, but you're struggling with all of your other stuff, and you feel like you're not good enough to do that. So you're very, very different people, and that does not mean it's going to be a bad relationship. My wife and I are exact opposites. Any personality test, if we take it, we get opposite scores every time. In that regard, we complement each other very, very nicely because my strengths make up for her weaknesses and vice versa. The thing with that, though, is you have to very deeply understand each other. You can't just be opposites and have a good relationship. If you're the same, if you're very similar, that relationship just kind of melds because you automatically get each other. The problem with two people who are very similar is they have the same weaknesses, and so they often have parts of their life that are kind of disastrous because neither of them will attend to it, like a messy house, or neither of them wants to work out or go anywhere. They don't have any friends. People who are opposites, their lives can be very complete, but they have to work really hard to understand each other and meld with each other. So you need to have some conversations with your boyfriend and talk about what he needs to be doing for you to bring you into this relationship and support you and help you and make you feel loved. But you also need to make sure that you're picking up your end of the rope and pulling your slack because he needs certain things from you. And it sounds to me like you might be a little scared of that conversation, which is totally understandable. But if he loves you, if he's your boyfriend, if this is worth it to both of you, he will have this conversation with you, right? Try to have it on the day when you're both feeling good, you're in a good mood, and you have some energy to really kind of dig into this, because this could take a couple hours, this could take a couple days. But it's an important conversation that you have to have. Otherwise, you're just sweeping things under the rug, and one day that rug's going to get pulled out from under you, and all of that stuff you swept under there is going to go flying all over the room. And you're going to have to clean it all up at once, whether you feel like it or not. If your love language is acts of service, right? If you like doing things for other people, I think gift giving is I might be wrong. I think gift giving is one of the languages. If that's it, if you like doing things for him, then you can figure out what he wants you to do for him, and you can start doing those things. And that will make him feel loved, and it will also validate you, because you'll get dopamine from doing those things. And it sounds to me like that could possibly be you. If you can find ways to support him with his passions and start making him feel more loved, and then he in return can start doing the things that you want him to do to make you feel loved and support you, that's going to increase your resting dopamine levels. Anything you can do to make yourself feel a little bit better throughout the day on average is going to support you on your journey. I'm going to talk more about neurochemistry in a moment, but figure out what he needs and invite him to figure out what you need and talk about it, because you guys have to help each other. Right now, there's a lot of friction between your self-development and your relationship, and if you can start to flip one of those things, you'll be able to start moving. That's very important. You say you feel like he's way too good for you. You're pretty sure he'll end up leaving you because you're not self-disciplined and you're not a doer. So somewhere in here there is a lie, and I'm not sure that I can pick it out because I don't have enough information, and maybe you can't pick it out either. But you say in here He didn't respond with deep understanding, but he says that he understands and he wants to stay with me, but he just wants me to be happy. But then you also say you feel like he's too good for you and you're pretty sure he's going to end up leaving you. So somewhere in there is a lie. Either he doesn't understand and he doesn't want to stay with you and he's lying to you about that, or you're lying about thinking that he's going to leave you. When you say, I'm pretty sure he'll end up leaving me, that is a lie. It's one of those two things. So either you are being way too hard on yourself and way too anxious and skeptical about your own relationship, and you're not listening to him. If he's saying that he loves you and he understands and he supports you, but you don't think he's being genuine, you might be the one who's lying because you're just not listening to him. You don't believe him. Maybe he's not very good at talking. That could be the case. But either way, he's not getting his message across and you think he's lying. Or he's lying and he does want to leave you, but he just doesn't know how. Somewhere in there, there's a little bit of a lie. And hopefully that will get uncovered when you have these conversations, because you guys need to communicate more clearly so that you really know how the other person's feeling, because you can't have these conversations, you can't have a successful relationship if you don't know how your other partner is really feeling. So, and you wrap up this email with, but the fact is I want to change because otherwise I'm really not living. I don't fully understand where this behavior is coming from. So I'm going to try to summarize this behavior as best as I can. I went through your whole email, gave you some specific points of information here and there, and now I'm just going to try to explain why all of this is happening to you. Need some water. Now, this is not a simple task for me to do. When I have coaching clients, we spend hours talking. I dig into every single little thought, every single little problem, and there can be a lot of things going on. But if I can explain to you my very basic understanding of brain chemistry, hopefully this can help you start to tell yourself a better story about why this is happening. So you really want to change, but you can't. Here's why on a very simple level. People get anxious and depressed because they're able to identify, in most cases, they're able to identify problems in their life that are severe. Big, bad, scary problems that they probably don't want to face and they don't know how to face. When you identify these problems, if you're neurotic, if you're very wordy, if you're very language-oriented, if you have a high IQ, there's lots of things that are associated with this type of neurotic behavior. You're going to start thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking, and you're not going to do anything. You're going to sit with it. And the more you sit with it, the more time goes by. Hours to days to weeks to months to years. For some people, decades. This time goes by and your problems sit there unaddressed, unsolved, and just kind of a mystery to you. What your reptile brain does, right, the primitive part of your brain that's really only focused on survival and reproduction, that brain is going to say, okay, there's big problems in my life, like big problems. I'm just the reptile brain. I can't think very deeply about it. I don't know what the problem is, but I know that this is stressing me out. It's been here for a long time, and if I don't do anything, I might die. It might kill me, right? Because your reptile brain wants to keep you warm at night. It wants to put food in your belly every day. It wants to reproduce. It wants to protect your children. That's what your reptile brain wants to do. And if the rest of your brain, your ego, your consciousness, whatever you want to call it, spends enough time thinking about your problems and feeling real stressed about it, that reptile brain is going to kick in. And here's what it's going to do. It's going to put you into fight or flight. It's going to increase your blood pressure. It's going to increase your heart rate. It's going to start putting cortisol into your bloodstream, which is going to digest muscle tissue. Your blood sugar is going to go up. Your insulin is going to go up, right? It's going to start giving you adrenaline. And your dopamine and your serotonin levels are going to start to drop. Because the last thing you need when you're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or you're about to get banished from the village, the last thing you need is a bunch of dopamine. Because that doesn't feel good. When you have lots of dopamine and serotonin, you feel good, you feel content, you can sit down and smile, feel good about yourself. That's the last thing you should be doing in a survival situation. Another thing that the the fight or flight, the stress response is going to do to you is it's going to slow down your digestion, right? And this is why a lot of people end up with digestive problems. They're always sick to their stomach. They think that they have all these food allergies and they start getting malnourished. It's because when you're running from a tiger, your energy is going to your heart. It's going to your circulatory system. It's going to your muscles. It's not going to your intestines or your stomach. That's not important right now. You're about to die. You have big problems in your life. So your body right now is in overdrive, right? It's overclocking your engines because you're so stressed. You're so anxious. There's so many things wrong, but you're not moving. You're not using that energy. You're thinking about it. You're imagining all these problems. What if he leaves me? What if I don't get into university? What if I never finish this children's book? Everything's wrong. And your reptile brain's freaking out because it can't tell that it's just your imagination. You're visualizing all of these disasters. And your body's responding, but you're not responding to your body, right? So you're caught in this cycle. And what that does, if you stay in that place long enough, you're going to take years off your life. I'm not trying to stress you out even more, but that's the truth. Some of the best ways to calm yourself down when you're in this place, when you're depressed or you're anxious, is to just breathe, right? Just take a moment to breathe. Slow down the heart rate. And once you can stabilize yourself, the best thing to do is something, anything, because action beats anxiety. Action beats anxiety all the time. Exercise. Go for a walk. Do something important on your list, preferably something where you're not sitting down. If you need to clean your kitchen, clean your kitchen. Put on your favorite song and really get into it. I mean, like, dance with the mop, get down on your knees and scrub every little spot, move your body. Because right now your body is fueling you. That stress is fueling you so that you can go, so you can run, you can fight, right? So use as much of that energy as you can. When I start feeling anxious sometimes, I have a standing desk like this. So I'll pop it up here and I'll work and I'll put on music and I'll dance. And I'll sing and I'll talk out loud to myself. Just use some of that energy, right? It can really, really help you. But I know how you feel, right? Because I am kind of a compulsive thinker. In fact, I have a video, an older video on my channel about compulsive thinking. If you go search on my channel or just Google Andrew Wuellner compulsive thinking, it'll probably come up. Might be a useful video. Don't really remember what I said in it. But that's what you're doing. It's compulsive thought. And compulsive thought can destroy you. And it is a slow, painful death. Your number one priority right now, my friend, I'm going to wrap this up here because this is kind of a long video. I apologize if it's too long. But your number one priority right now is to raise your dopamine. Raise your average feel-good levels, okay? Because right now, on average, typically on a normal day, you don't feel very good. You need to raise those levels with healthy activities. Not eating sugar, not binge watching Netflix or anything like that. You need to do good things that give you good dopamine, that tell your body to relax and come out of that fight or flight state. And that typically, for most people, looks like really tiny baby steps on your most important goals. You probably have lots of goals on your list that are arbitrary, that you only put there because you feel like they need to be there, because society expects them to be there. No. Pick the ones that are most important to you, that make you feel good about yourself. Maybe it's the children's books. If you really, really love the children's books, go for a walk. Go for a power walk. Go to a really beautiful park, walk as fast as you possibly can, and meditate. Think very deeply on this children's book. Think about the characters and the story and the illustrations. What do you want it to be? And keep a little pen and paper with you and write down your ideas. Make progress on your goals. Whenever you feel good, when you feel like you have the energy, work on it. Make 1% progress, 2% progress. Little baby steps are going to give you that sense of accomplishment. And the more you meditate on that sense of accomplishment, that sense of progress, the more you're going to raise your baseline feel-good levels, your baseline serotonin and dopamine. And those are the things that are going to push you into a more positive state where you can actually relax because you're not anxious and you're not so depressed anymore, and you actually feel like your life is moving somewhere. Have that conversation with your boyfriend, right? Reach a level of understanding that you have never had before in your relationship with him. Get deep with him. Bring him into this. He has to be a part of this. That will raise your average dopamine levels. That'll raise your feel-good levels. All of these things are small, tiny steps that are going to push you towards the life that you want, the things that you want to be. And the more progress you make and the better your life gets, the easier it's going to be for you to identify all these little lies that you've been telling yourself. And your story's going to get better, and your life is going to get better. So I really hope that helped, my friend. If any of you have other questions you want to ask me about your life, if you want some advice on something, I'm a strength coach. I coach people in their businesses and their lives. This is kind of what I do. I love filming these videos. You can leave your question in the comments, or you can send it to the email in the description, and I'll try to film a video and upload it for you. I hope all of you are doing really, really well, and I wish you the best for the rest of 2020. It's been a stressful year, but it's also been a year filled with very unique opportunities, and I hope you're taking advantage of all this time that you have. That's all I got for you. Sorry this video was on the longer side. Hope it was helpful, and we'll catch you in the next one.